Alright, so we're back online and we're learning something that we actually started working on Monday, for those of us that were there. We're learning how to make equations that we can graph, and to do it really easy with shortcuts, so we don't have to worry about formulas or other processes that we've learned earlier in the term. It relates to something that we learned, well, not yesterday. This is when the video was made. It was yesterday, but on Monday we learnt something, and that thing that we learnt is that when we're working with equations that have y and x in them, some of the equations, if we just look at them and understand them, will actually tell us the gradient, which is how fast the graph goes up and down, and also the y-intercept. And we know a y-intercept is, if I have a graph that goes through like this, the y-intercept is right here, right? It's where it goes through the y-axis. And a good way of thinking about the y-intercept, it could be where your graph starts from if you're sketching it. And what we learned was that some equations are good at telling us that stuff immediately, and some of them aren't. And the ones that are really good are these ones here. Ones that have y and then equals at the start. So this one doesn't have y equals, the y's all jumbled up with the x's over here, so we're not looking at these ones today. We're just looking at y equals something x plus something. And having an equation set out like this will tell you the gradient and tell you the y-intercept. So for those of you who are playing along properly at home and having a good crack at this today, what you'll want this in your glossary, because this is the way that we write it. When we have an equation that starts with y equals, we call it the gradient intercept form. And then basically we have these letters here, m and c, and they're basically going to be numbers when you've got an equation. Okay, so we call them m and c because they represent parts of our graph. So the m represents what the gradient is. So if there's a number there, that is the gradient of your graph. That's how quickly it goes up. And the letter c, that's your y-intercept. So just by looking at your equation, you'll know what the y-intercept is. That's really where you should start plotting your graph. Of course, the gradient is how fast it goes up. So examples of this. So today, you'll just be given equations, and you'll be asked to find the gradient and the y-intercept. So if I give you y equals 3x take 5, the number that's with x in front of x is always the gradient. So this one here has a gradient that's equal to 3. And the y-intercept is just the other number, right? The one that's not next to the letter x. So the y-intercept is -5. And what that means is you could graph that really easily. You'd start down at -5 and you'd be counting up by 3s and putting dots. And it's the quickest, most easiest, most efficient way of making a graph. So with this one, it's just written around the other way. So you've just got to look for the number that's next to x for a start for your gradient. So next to the letter x, I can see a -3, which means this is a graph that actually goes down by 3s. And the y-intercept is the other number. It's out the front, and it's a 5. Right? It's not a -5, it's just a normal 5 sitting out the front. So this one has a gradient that's -3 and a y-intercept of 5. Okay, and the skill you just need from Monday and today is to be able to look at this equation and get those features out of it. All right, and the other thing you'll have to be able to do today is be given some information, like be given a gradient and an intercept. Right, we've got a gradient of 3 and an intercept of 9, and you should just be able to put them into an equation of your own. And it's using this form, y equals something x plus c. So what we've got to do is just kind of write down that y equals, there's going to be something there, and it's going to be x, and it can be plus or minus, and then we put a number there. So the gradient just goes with the letter x, so you should just put a 3 with it. If your rule's going up by 3, put a 3 in front of x. And then since the intercept is at 9, we just go plus 9. All right, and we've turned some information into an equation. And we can do it by looking at a graph. Right, we're going to be going y equals something x, and then there'll be another number here. All right, so this number here is the y-intercept, and the y-intercept is here at 3. So we put a plus 3 there. And this graph, I just need to find the gradient for it, and this graph I can see goes up by 2s. Every step across it goes up by 2s, so it has a gradient of 2. So this graph, just by looking at it, has the equation that's y equals 2x plus 3. All right, now the second half of your worksheet today is going to have questions that are a bit trickier, but you do have all the skills from previous weeks required to actually try and do this. So the question will basically say you've got to transpose the equation to make y the subject. So they're basically saying we want the equation to look like one of these ones. right? Or one of these ones. It should be y equals something something, because when it looks like that, you can see the gradient and you can see the y-intercept because it's right in front of your face. But these equations don't look like that, right? They don't have y equals, right? There's all this stuff on the same side. So this is partly why we practiced solving equations, right? Moving one thing to the other side, right? Y has too many friends on its side, so we're going to pick them off and send them to the other side. So basically what you've got to do, this one is just plussing and minusing. I want to get that 2x to the other side. And I want to get the 14 to the other side as well. So they're going to come across here. So by moving the 2x and moving the 14 to the other side, y will be by itself, right? We kind of picked off all its friends. We got rid of them. We put the 2x on the other side. It's a positive now, right? Because I plussed it. And there'll be a minus 14 as well. And what that means is I can answer the question, the gradient equals 2. And the y-intercept equals minus 14. And I can see that because I rearranged it. Okay, this next one's a little bit trickier. The first thing you want to do is the same. You want to do all your takeaways and your pluses as you can to start with. So we'll move them across here. We'll take away the 4x and we'll add the 5. And what that's going to leave us with, that'll leave us with 3y equals minus 4x plus 5. Because I've just moved them over there, but I've done the opposite, right? If it was a plus, I took, and if it was a minus, I plussed. But I don't have y equals, I have 3y equals. And we've learnt that the opposite of having a 3 there, a timesing 3, is to divide by 3. That means we just have to divide everything by 3 to keep it all balanced. That'll mean that it's y equals minus 4 on top of 3x, right? That's what happens when I divide by 3. You just make a fraction out of it. And I do the same thing here. And because I've got y equals, the answers are fractions, that doesn't matter. The gradient, right? The gradient equals minus 4/3. And the y-int equals 5/3. So you might find some of these questions challenging today. There's a left-hand side on your worksheet that's pretty straightforward. It's mainly just looking at equations and finding the gradient and finding the intercept. The right-hand side does require this. Have a go at a couple of them, see if you can get your head around them, see if you're getting the answers right. And if this part's a bit too tough, then it's probably time to move on to mathematics. So welcome back online. This is your first lesson back. We'll take some time to get back into the swing of things, but hopefully this stuff treats you well. And if you've got any questions, I'm online, so shoot them through.